A very warm welcome to you friends from VCANINSPIRE. This video is about how can or how should one read in public or in front of an audience. The audience can be a small audience, which means in a classroom, or the audience can be bigger, which means in an auditorium. One can read a text from a given chapter or a given book, or one can read a speech. In both cases, how can and how should one read? And how generally people or somebody ends up reading. So generally, how does one read? So we have a volunteer, Nidhi Jaiswal, who will read, and let us see how she reads and how she can be corrected. Nidhi, you are invited. Please come.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Once upon a time, there was an old woman. She lived alone in a hut in a forest. The forest was thick. There were many animals in the forest, but she was not afraid. All the animals loved the old woman.
So now, Nidhi, you will notice that when you were reading at the end of the sentence, you will always have one way of speaking. Once upon a time there was an old woman. Again, stop. She lived alone in a forest. The forest was very thick. So every time when the sentence ends, you are reading like this and then you come down, and you're reading like this and you come down. So the intonation or the modulation remains the same. So it seems you are reading from the text and it can be very boring reading. The listener gets bored. Just imagine there is a music going on and the same music, same tone plays on and on and on. So how will it be? Similar is the reading. So let's see this and let's see the change.
Yes, sir.
Please notice it. Once upon a time, there was an old woman. She lived alone in a forest. Forest was very thick. There were many animals in the forest. But she was not afraid. So you notice now that my last words are not stopping and breaking at the same pitch.
Yeah.
So it's according to the importance of that word in that sentence, and it's also according to the importance of that sentence in that story. Okay? So can you try?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, please try.
Once upon a time, there was an old woman. She lived alone in a forest. The forest was thick.
So again, if you notice, again at the end of this word, again at the end of the sentence, it is the same. Everything is going. Now your beginning modulation is good, but the ending is always the same.
Once upon a time, there was an old woman.
You're just raising your pitch, but there is no modulation.
Once upon a time, there was
Once upon a time, there was an old woman.
Once upon a time, there was an old woman.
So as if you're telling that story. Yeah, again. Continue. Next sentence.
Once upon a time, there was an old woman.
So this woman, old woman, doesn't come through. The emotion of that old woman doesn't. She's an old woman. So where is the old woman?
Once upon a time, there was an old woman. She lived alone in a forest.
So where is this emotion of alone? She lived alone in a forest. Where is the emotion of the forest?
She lived alone in the forest.
So what you have done in a forest. So you're coming down.
In a forest.
In a forest. The forest is important, no?
She lived alone in a forest.
Yeah.
The forest was thick. There were many animals in the forest.
Yeah, okay, continue.
But she was not afraid.
This is much better. This sentence is the best in which you read. So continue one more sentence.
All the animals loved the old woman.
This is much better.
One day, a hunter came to the forest.
So this is an important change in the A. So one day, a hunter came to the forest.
One day, a hunter came to the forest.
Yeah. So the hunter must come to the forest. So you must make the audience feel that the hunter is coming to the forest.
Yes.
Yeah.
One day, a hunter came to the forest.
Yeah, so it's much better. See the difference?
Yes.
Yeah, so this is how it should be. Now you understand the difference?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, Nidhi. I'll call you again.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Notice the voice modulation. Notice the ups and downs of the voice. Notice the pauses which have been made during the reading. Let's see this. Once upon a time, there was an old woman. She lived alone in a hut in a forest. The forest was thick. There were many animals in the forest, but she was not afraid. All the animals loved the woman. One day, a hunter came to the forest. Now, you notice what is the difference. What are the pauses after each sentence? The pauses reflect the emotion and the importance of those sentences. The pauses also reflect the very importance of that sentence in the story. So there is a storyline. There could be a storyline in which the pauses reflect the importance of that sentence in the story or that event in the story. This is an important aspect. The other important aspect when one is reading in front of a class, when one reads in front of the class, it is important to keep looking at the audience. Let us see this and see the difference. Once upon a time, there was an old woman. She lived alone in a hut in a forest. Now, you are not looking at the audience when you are reading. So, from time to time, you have to raise your head and look at the audience so that the audience get interested in you. So, there is voice modulation. There is also this attraction of looking at the audience and looking at all of them when they are, whether they are listening to you or not. Right? This is in a classroom. Let's see the same thing when we are giving a speech or reading a speech, given speech in a bigger audience. And let's see the voice level and the modulation. Once upon a time, there was an old woman. She lived alone in a hut in a forest. The forest was very thick. There were many animals in the forest, but she was not afraid at all. All the animals loved the woman. One day, a hunter came to the forest. So, when you have a bigger audience, the decibel level or the voice level or the pitch has to be on a higher side, on a higher scale. And despite that, one has to maintain the voice modulation. So this is the difference between reading in a classroom and reading a text or a given speech in a bigger audience or in a bigger auditorium. Now, let's see how a conversation is to be read, is to be spoken. Let's see this. And when there is a conversation, both the speakers one has to be careful about both the speakers. Let's see this. Hi Simi, what did you cook today? Oh, very simple. Just rice, dal and curry and some papad, you know. Oh, was it plain rice or pulao? I just made plain rice with ghee. We have some good pickles, so it is sufficient. Children like dal, you know. What curry did you cook? Potato and beans with parval, etc., you know. Do you eat non-veg? Yes, sometimes. So, this is a difference between one speaker and the other speaker, and how despite reading a conversation, you can still gain attraction of the listener. Thank you very much for listening and watching this video. I hope you'll be able to see our other videos which we shall be able to talk to you about. Thank you very much.